Hello and welcome to Neuromentoring. We are so glad you could join us.
I'm Lucy,
And I'm Brian.
and together we explore what mentoring is in these neurodiverse spaces we call universities. And today's topic is the mentor's responsibility to reflect.
Oh, that's just such a huge topic. Not only is it us being reflecting mentors, but that responsibility that sits within us to
Mm,
do that kind of stuff. It's not just the nice thing on the end where you're a mentor and you're an even better mentor if you can reflect. It's actually deep down in the DNA of what makes a great mentor. I think one of the best places to start is actually to start with a few of the things that we wrestle with ourselves. Lucy and I were having a chat before we started recording, partly because it's also us recording the last one of this series. It's been brilliant.
dun, dun, dun.
Oh, really exciting. But also, we do have things as mentors that we do wrestle with, and we've wrestled with through our entire career. I mean, mine is the difference between doing and being, that whole action versus actually time to sort of stop and think and be. But I think first of all, Lucy, we're going to turn to you, your big wrestle that you've had with mentoring.
For me, it's been pronouns, not adversity, not rejection. It's been when I was younger, I had a lot of support for not explaining everybody as she. And that kind of translates not in the same sense, but as an adult. I struggle if somebody presents in a particular way but has different preferred pronouns. It takes me a little while to really for it to sink in as such because I'm quite a visual person. If somebody is presenting as female visually, but they want to use the pronouns he, him, it takes me a little while. But the thing is, that sort of the way I found to wrestle is be honest with students. So this really is not a personal attack. This is something I continue to work on. And I may get it wrong occasionally, but please correct me if I do, because sometimes I won't even realise.
And Lucy, to take the weight from your shoulder, you were trained into it by a very well-meaning linguist, a speech and language therapist, because actually nowadays, if you just called everybody she, you'd probably get away with it. But 10, 15 years ago, less so. I say this as a man
Yeah.
with a glorious big white beard. You can call me a she as much as you like. That kind of that they meant well, but they've left you with this almost double think about it.
Yeah, and I almost have to because I really, really want to get it right. I really, really want to get it right. But sometimes mid conversation, the wrong pronoun may slip up. So I try during the sort of the establishing phase of the rapport you build with the student, just being honest. Like there might be times that my pronouns slip up. If that is the case, please bring it to my attention. And to be honest, from my experience, I'm touch wood. I'm yet to have an experience, have a student who's offended by that. I've just been honest. Said, look, sometimes I get this wrong, but I don't always realize I'm doing it. And actually showing that humility and
Mm.
that I'm a human being. I'm not, there are things that I wrestle with. And that honesty, I think, goes a long way in you building a really strong relationship with your mentee.
Deeply. It is that your ability to reflect, your ability to be humble. And actually, strangely, humility is one of those things that came up during my research about mentoring on such a regular occurrence. But yet, we never really talk about the power of humility.
No.
It's one of those things. I hope to talk about it a bit more. And it is one of those ideas that, particularly the concept of robust humility, that I've just parked for a little while. And times like this is a really good place to air it out for the first time.
Yeah.
So I suppose the things that I get wrong, and I have to be all humble about this and open and robust about it, is when I push towards action. So if I'm sitting with a student and they say, "Oh, Brian, this is happening in my halls. I've got a problem with the washing up in halls." My first bit is not to sit back and actually say, "Well, if there is a problem with washing up in halls, it'll resolve itself." students are still young in the first few months. They usually work out how to use a scrubbing brush at some point. My first impulse is always, right, let's do something about this. We will invent the washing up fairy to go and visit and shame them at night. So that movement towards doing stuff is where I sometimes struggle with. And I think with a lot of the students that I've worked with over the years, my impulse to do, to fix, to come up with some kind of harebrained scheme to see how it all comes up, sometimes gets in the way of just, actually, we'll see how this pans out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sometimes a nice slowly approach works. So I will say I almost caught myself doing it when you were doing that wonderful thing and talking to me about the pronouns.
Yeah.
There's part of me that just wanted to jump in and go, oh, have you thought about? And actually, no. I have to be wise enough to sit and say, actually, Lucy, that, yeah, you are doing some good struggle there. I am deeply proud of you. I'm not going to jump in though. Yeah.
No, and it's creating that space. What does the student need from me here? Is it suggestions, or is it just a listening ear?
Exactly.
A guiding hand.
And I tend towards the suggestion far too fast. So sometimes I need to be more of a listening ear. Just sort of stick them onto the outside of my scalp. Just make them stick out and listen a little. And part of that with me has been this process over many years now of growing my own emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Have we got a definition of emotional intelligence to start with?
Not from the top of my head, no. I don't want to give another fluffy explanation like I did in the previous episode on ebb and flow.
Oh, that was brilliant. I love that one.
No, how about you?
I don't work with one either. It is for me, and it's coming back to that sort of humble stuff. I've never been great at noticing my own emotions. And that means that the categorization of other people's emotions has always taken a little while longer than it maybe could have. So particularly, my teenage years, I was fairly archetypal, angry young man. Oh, there's a feeling going on inside. I must be really ready to break the state. And luckily, there's been a bit more nuance now that my teenagers are now 35 years away. Yes, there's been that growth, that settling down. There has also been that passageway from anger via quite often tears to a place of maybe a bit more wisdom. I don't want to discount anger. It has, as a young man, it was my guiding emotion, particularly about the things that were wrong in the world. But I had to go from anger into a time where I could sit with it. I could cry about the things that were wrong in the world. And only then could I actually start to have the wisdom to, oh shit, I'm going to say putting a suggestion forward. Doing versus being, Brian.
Yeah. I think it's kind of, see, I would always say that I developed emotional intelligence post my adult diagnosis. With awareness, with my master's degree, with knowledge, I was empowered to then make the decision to develop my emotional intelligence. But I feel really passionately about emotional literacy, and I don't think, potentially this is a political view, but I don't feel that the curriculum really equips young people with the tools to develop their own emotional literacy and their own emotional intelligence.
And I love the fact that you're talking about two separate things there. You've got the literacy, the being able to read your own emotions. This is at the moment I'm feeling anxiety. At the moment I love the fact Inside Out 2 has a character called Ennui.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. But actually being able to have those words to ascribe to emotions is one thing. And then to have the intelligence of how when 2, 3, 4 groups of people get together and how those emotions start to ricochet and bounce around. Really interesting that double approach. But also it's grounded in, we have to be able to have words for our feelings. And I would say even further, as someone who wasn't in touch with my feelings for a long part of my life, actually knowing my body first was really interesting too.
Mm.
I still do quite a bit of yoga, and I need to know where my body is so I know what emotion it is that I'm feeling. And then once I know what emotion I'm feeling, I can then see how that's impacting on those people around me. And I've got really fast at doing it. It's almost real time now. I'm not sure anyone else notices.
Yeah, no, I think ultimately yes, you do have a responsibility to reflect to be a successful mentor, but I think there are varying degrees into
Yes.
how prepared and how ready you are to reflect. Because it's not a matter of I did this right, I did this wrong. It's a matter of why did I do something like this? How could I improve it? It adds a sort of a secondary layer of criticality and that ability to look at your practice and think, how can I be better? And to
Yeah.
truly want to be better. If you
And,
don't
and
want to be better, you won't be proficient in reflection and improving your practice.
and it is that point of being better. It's not about, well, it is partially about sometimes we will do things that will go horribly, horribly pear-shaped where we haven't been at all good. But most of the time, with most of the mentors I've talked to, you are more than adequate. You are usually quite brilliant. But it's how you then continue to be brilliant, how you sustain the brilliance, how you
Mm.
make sure that it's part of your toolkit of reserves, that actually when something has gone really well, you can pull it out again, maybe with another student if appropriate. And it's that reflection upon what you've done. So I don't know about yourself, but I used to make sure that when I was mentoring in person, that my journeys home were times for reflection. I wouldn't even walk the closest way home, the quickest way home, because, back where I was working, my house luckily was only 10 minutes away. But I'd actually take the half-hour walk that would go out along by the national parks and do through a little bit of nature. By the time I got home, I'd managed to process the day.
So I've tried to do that in my own way, in that
Mm,
I've changed how I work, in that I now have breaks between students. So that if there's anything that it wasn't appropriate for me to have my head down writing notes, I can quickly write down some things that I perhaps would forget if I said, oh, I'll write that down later. Actually giving myself that time to reflect on how the session has gone, to get down any notes that you think are important or significant, and perhaps action points for the next session. Creating just that 10-minute gap between students has really, really helped me with that and process the session ready for the next session. So I kind of do that in my own micro sort of way.
deeply, and I love the fact that you're using notes. When I was doing so much more mentoring in person, and this always shocks me, I would use paper. I'm such a digital fiend, yet when I'm sitting and listening, I would love to have a piece of paper where I can just write a couple of notes as it happens. But for those of you who are listening, Lucy is now holding up a book.
A bright pink
Oh,
shot notebook.
that's gorgeous. And so when I needed my sort of reflection time, I would take those little bits in my notepad as I was walking, and I'd sort of just lift through and just sort of add the notes. I only once walked into traffic, just so Brian, but it was having
Oh.
those reminders of what was going
Mm.
on at the time. I've disclosed plenty that my memory is atrocious and shocking, which is why a life that is reflected through note taking is really quite important. Because I can't do that time traveling thing of memory and actually see myself back in the mentoring room. Actually, having the notes that were real time and I could trust myself for the notes allowed me to structure things around it and also make notes for the next set of notes so that in real time I could feed back those thoughts that would happen real time. I would be taking the notes on notes in real time so that the next meeting I would come back
Yeah.
and then reflect things back to students.
Oh, for similar reasons, my long-term memory is fabulous. My short-term memory, I'll do that later. It's too much of a risk. So my
Yeah.
insurance is that I write notes. If it doesn't go down on paper, I will not remember it.
Knowing that I don't have a memory and being honest with myself about that is deeply useful. Knowing where my own flaws are and the things I need to
Yes.
do. Yeah. On that sort of honesty, There was a time I used to lie to myself about my own capacity. Actually say, Brian, you can do that. You can put that off for another time. It won't disappear from your mind. That never ever happened. So that honesty with myself and lying to myself, there is some scope where sometimes we should lie to ourselves so we can get through the day. Yes, you have the capacity to do this. You're going to pay for it later. Yes, yeah, the world is a good and nice place, and you're going to behave as it is, so you bring goodness and niceness to the world. But lying, Lucy, tell me about lying.
So, as I've mentioned in other previous episodes, I have an ADHD presentation. Sometimes I can white lie if the ADHD is the predominant condition to rear its head, in the sense of protecting someone's feelings, even a little bit of people pleasing. However, the caveat to that is that my soul categorically melts when my sense of justice surfaces with my autistic presentation, and oh my gosh, it becomes an awful cycle of that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. So I try not to as much as possible.
While I avoid the mistruths, for the simple reason is I can't keep track of them.
Yeah.
I will come so unstuck if I say anything that isn't the truth. And so I keep my, I suppose it's executive functioning in check by making sure I tell the truth, and then I can come back to the truth. I'm very fortunate, though, that the few times I've had to lie, well, had to professionally lie, because that they are so few and far between, I can keep them up. So I do tell students, if they ever need me to lie to their parents, then students come first. And I'm sorry, any parents that are listening to this, if you ever had a message from Brian saying, yeah, everything's fine, he's going to all his lectures. I will only do that if commanded to do so by those that I'm working for. And actually, I think sometimes we need someone in our corner who can sometimes bend the truth for us. Lucy, you're nodding. Tell me more.
I just think it's interesting because to the absolute core of my soul, honesty is the best policy. And I don't like buts because buts are grey areas. But and the but in this situation is sometimes white lies are kinder,
Yeah.
but you have to calculate the consequences, and that's something that's not always easy to do. So I try and live by honesty is the best policy per se. But I appreciate there are different people, there are different presentations. They're just how my conditions affect my cognition, and that's how I process things. But I'm sure there will be many more situations beyond my understanding in terms of when you might white lie.
Yeah. So with the parents in particular, if a parent is putting undue stress upon the student because they are constantly checking in on the student, then just, and this is usually as a mutual email when they've sent me an email to worry about a student, and I will sit with the student and then we'll write the reply together and we'll make sure it comes together.
Yeah.
Maybe in that point that, I'll say, that the student feels they're doing very well, and the student may be riddled with doubts, but that kindness towards the parent has the side effect that there is less pressure going on to the student.
Absolutely.
So the student can flourish. And maybe this is, how we reflect upon our hierarchies of truth.
Yeah.
How we actually then, who are we working for? We're not working for the parents.
For the
We're
parents,
working for
no.
the freedom and advocacy of the students that we serve. Yeah, it is. So a tricky one about lying. So I've done quite a bit of reflection upon which truths I will bend and who I will bend them for, with the caveat that I'm really kind of bad at it because I've forgotten I've done it. It's a good one, isn't it? And I suppose that's where that last bit about knowing I'm bad at it, that links into, I suppose, our humility for stuff. So it's this big idea of what the mentors that I did some research with termed robust humility. That humility that isn't, oh, I'm worthless, I have nothing to say. That's is the kind of humility saying, look, I am who I am, I'm a bit broken, I know my way around myself, but because of that, I will hopefully be a mirror where you can look at the flaws in yourself.
Yeah,
There is
absolutely.
something, so it is, I believe it's the Marine Corps of all people that have humility in yourself is the first step towards leadership in a team. Knowing that you might get things wrong allows you to work with other people so you get things right. And that's the humility that as mentors we have to inhabit, the humility we have to possess. Actually,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that, oh, I don't know anything kind of humility. It's, I
No.
don't know anything. Let's work it out together. That's
Yeah,
more exciting, isn't it?
absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's an imperative part of being is
Mm.
being not a parental replacement, not being a tutor or a teacher, but you're kind of in this really unique space that just has the potential to enable and emancipate a student from their own boundaries that are imposed on them, barriers. And for me, that's why it's such a important job, and it's absolutely pivotal that you reflect.
And it is, and that sort of creation, that nurturing of these
Yeah,
students who can advocate. But hopefully, and this is maybe taking one step further, by expressing our robust out, by being really happy with it, the students in turn find their own humility. Again, not that humility of, oh, I've got everything wrong. I mean, there's a presentation of narcissism, which is, oh, I'm a terrible person. Look at me, I'm a terrible person. What we're not going down that line. We're going for the proper, robust humility of young people, young early career academics who know
yeah,
that they don't know. And in universities, we need to know that we don't know. And it's only
yeah,
by knowing that we don't know do we start to find out what the next new thing is. And actually, hopefully, and this is why I think the mentoring that you and I have done, the mentoring that mentors all across higher education do, if they're specialist mentors or if they're mentors who are just being tutors, actually creating these people who know that they don't know so can find out is what higher education is all about. We are pivotal to that in our robust humility. There's a big thought.
mm.
Have I just claimed too much for us? I'm being humble about it. I'm trying at least.
I think ultimately the craft, mentoring is a craft, it
Yeah,
is an art. It's not rigid. Yes, there are parameters. Yes, there are boundaries. However, in terms of the actual role, it's fluid.
yeah, it
It
is.
constantly needs to be developed. You constantly need to learn to keep up with what's going on and the speed in higher education, so you kind of know kind of what is going on for the student. And ultimately, this role forces you to develop, should force you to want to better yourself in order to keep on growing.
I, so sometimes I talk about the difference between coaching, teaching, and mentoring. So mentoring is about wisdom, teaching is about knowledge, craft is about men, coaching is about learning skills. Now, at the far end of coaching, when you coach without skills, you're getting into the tendency of craft. So you know what you should do. And so the craft of mentoring, I know what I should do. But if I turn it into a craft, there are times in when you move from just a skill into being a crafts person where you leave the skill behind. And the skill is so ingrained, you do it without thinking. And sometimes you break the skill without thinking. So there are times, I think, when I'm working as a good mentor, as a proper mentor, when I'm at the height of my powers, where I will do things that I wouldn't do and I wouldn't talk about in a thing like this. I'd take it one step on. My skill gets broken and it becomes something more. And interesting in teaching, so teaching, if it's about knowledge, there are times in higher education where we go past knowledge into not knowing, that sort of humble researcher kind of stuff. That's brilliant. The interesting thing is, I'm starting to think about what happens when we go past wisdom as mentors. So wisdom is our big domain. It's what we try and
Yeah.
share, it's what we try and grow. If you try and work in a space without wisdom, then you're working in a place of foolishness, of what Shakespeare sometimes has as these little sort of jester characters, which sometimes speak truth to power in a way that wisdom can't. There's a big thought at the end of 12, 12
episodes.
12 episodes. If we are wise mentors, sometimes we go beyond wisdom into foolishness. And sometimes that foolishness, like the world's best clowns, actually allow us to develop others in such a way through humor and humility where we become something new. There's a radical thought for you.
That's a whole new episode or two in itself.
How to be properly silly mentors. When we go through wisdom and out the other end, when sometimes we just look at the absurdity of the world, we just have to giggle.
Yeah, because if you don't, you cry.
Exactly. And this is the hard space of mentoring, that emotional space, that we reflect upon, that space of human dignity, that space of shared sorrow, and that shared space of a foolish giggle at the absurdity of the world and how we can make it a better place.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think that's a great place to hang it on. So thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Brian.
If you have questions, we'd love to hear them for a potential new series at neuromentoringpodcast@gmail.com.
This has been Neuromentoring. Be
Be
brilliant.
brilliant.